Welcome to the Claim Your Day podcast. Here, it's all about taking full advantage of the time we have today and becoming intentional with our actions so we each can have the impact we want. If you want to stop drifting through life and start directing your life, and you're open to a short podcast from someone who's working at the exact same thing, then welcome. You're in the right place, my friend. Hi, I'm your host, Nick Mazy. To respect your time and so you can claim your day, let's dive right in. Hello, my friend, and welcome. Welcome to episode 41 of the Claim Your Day podcast. Glad you're here and joining in. Really, I hope you caught some of those previous series that we've done, especially the one on habits that we just finished up, as well as the one-off episodes last week. If you missed any of those, feel free to check them out. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, you should be able to access that too. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any further ones as well. Look, we're diving forward and we're moving forward. Can you believe that we're halfway through the year? Well, if you're listening to this right when it first comes out, we're already a little bit past halfway through the year. But think about that. You know, we're cruising through this year. This podcast is all about being intentional, like choosing how we want to live our lives, and really pursue that. And in order to make sure that we're on the right path, each one of us, we have to check in. So these next few episodes, kind of like a little bit of a mid-year check-in to see, hey, where are you at? So that way you can determine what kind of adjustments you might need to make so that you can be on track with where you want to be and truly live your best life. Make the most of the time, living out your purpose with intentionality. And that's what this podcast is about. So we're going to dive into that in these next few episodes right here. It's just going to be a short series. I know a lot of my series are longer. This one's just 4 episodes. Real quick, so just this week and next week to help you check in on where you're at so that you can make any adjustments that you see fit for you, your life, your family, and what's most important to you. A key thing here is when we're checking in, it's just a time to be honest. It's a time to honestly evaluate where we're at. No judgment, just awareness. And I get it, that's tough sometimes, but it's essential. If you're judging yourself too hard, then you're not going to be as honest sometimes, or you'll just be really hard on yourself, and that just makes things difficult. But I'm getting ahead just a little bit. Have you ever noticed that sometimes during sporting events, one team goes into halftime and they're behind, and then they come out of halftime, and then all of a sudden they've made some adjustments and they're making a lot of progress, and they end up going on to win. Well, it's those adjustments that are made during the halftime that help them to make those improvements. But also, those adjustments don't come without first checking in, evaluating where they're at, seeing what adjustments need to be made. And so that's where we want to really just check in, a little bit of awareness, a little bit of evaluation, a little less judgment. That way you can make the adjustments that you need to make. And we're going to take that and apply it to our lives for this year. Look, this is for you. If this year has flown by at all without you taking a moment, some time, preferably regularly, to check in on your progress. So this is going to be a deliberate pause for a little honest reflection. And that's going to be crucial to really understanding where you're at so that you can make those adjustments, informed adjustments, so that you can be intentional with the rest of the year and make progress in the areas that are most important to you. A lot of this relates to John Maxwell's law of awareness. I've mentioned it before on this podcast, but hey, if we're going to be intentional, we have to have an awareness of where we're at so we can be intentional with what we do. So it's going to come up again and again. But what we're doing is we're just really going to see where we're at right now. What's your current position? And that way we can connect this to evaluating the first part of the year so we can make the second part of the year as good as it possibly can be. As John Maxwell says, if you don't know where you are, then you can't know where you're going. It's like a lot of the value of the GPS that many of us use, most of us use a GPS at some point in time. And a lot of the value is not just that it will tell you where you're going, but it shows where you're at right now so that you know what you need to do next in order to continue on your path to your goal. And if you've ever been like me, and sometimes past that turn, it goes into this rerouting screen, and then all of a sudden it tells you what you need to do. Well, that's the value, is that it's aware of where you're at. It's aware that when you get off track, and so it shows you how to get back to that path that you want. That's what we're going to do right here. So the first point for this episode is that we got to be aware of where we're at. We got to be aware of where we're at. And the second point is I just want you to think of some key areas to reflect on. Some key areas. Now you can go into a whole lot of areas. You can add more. If there's ones that I don't mention right now that resonate with you, go ahead and check in on yourself in that area and be aware of where you're at. Perfect. Some broad kind of groups, not necessarily life categories, but just some groups of things that you can think about. And what is most important to you in these areas, think about those, let it rise to the surface. The first one is goals. If we're going to check in on where we're at, if you set some goals for yourself for this year, then now's the time to say, hey, where are you at? What were some of the key goals that you had for this year? What kind of progress had you made? Where are you at with those goals? Go through them. Go through them. And as always, this is a great thing to do with a little bit of a pen and pad, paper, or maybe a tablet, however you want. But writing it down is huge. It's going to help you to really see where you're at, and you can just be really honest with yourself and evaluate where you're at in each of these areas. So the first one's goals. The next one I want you to look at are your values. What actions have you taken in the first half of this year that have aligned with your core values? What actions have you taken in the first half of the year that's aligned with your core values? The next area I want you to think about is your time and your energy. Your time and your energy. How are you spending your absolutely most valuable resource that you have, and that's your time? How are you spending your choices related to your time and your energy? Okay, so we have goals, we have values, we have time and energy. And then the last one is just wins and challenges. Wins and challenges. What successes have you experienced? What progress have you made? Successes? What things have you achieved? What are some good things that you've been able to accomplish the first half of this year? And then what are maybe some obstacles, and challenges that you've encountered, experienced, maybe some setbacks? It's okay. It's okay. Don't judge yourself too hard on these. This is a time to just become aware so that then you can make adjustments. There's an old saying, and it's, don't judge a man by his mistakes, judge a man by what he does about them. So I want you to apply that, give yourself a little bit of grace right here, and don't judge yourself too harshly when things didn't go right. Congratulate yourself because you're evaluating where you're at so that you can make those adjustments. Now, you notice in here, I didn't dive into a lot of specific life areas. If it's family, work, finances, health, recreation, hobbies, community, any of those great life areas to set goals in. And that would be a different kind of check-in where we're kind of making some evaluations for that. It's a great thing to be intentional, is checking on your specific life areas. In fact, I'm creating a new resource just for you to help you to do that, to shift, to be able to live more of your purpose on track for you and your life and what's most important to you, to have that impact you want. But I digress. Get all off topic. These specific areas is general broad areas. That way, what life areas are most important to you, with your goals and values and where you're at right now with your life, will apply when you're doing a little bit of reflection on your goals, values, time and energy, and some of the wins and challenges. Now, it's really important. The third point for this is what's really important is that when you're doing this, when you're checking in, when you're doing this little bit of reflection to be aware of where you're at, I've mentioned it, but it's worth being its own point right here for the 3 points of this episode, is be objective. Be objective. Look, just when you're reflecting, be honest with yourself. No harsh self-criticism. Just being really honest and blunt. That's a great thing. You can actually write this down where no one else will see it. It's just you. It's just you. Okay? But I encourage you to the greatest degree possible to be very honest, straightforward with yourself. Give yourself some grace. Don't judge yourself. So that way you don't filter it. That way you don't filter it. That way you don't softball it. Also, that way you're not too harsh on yourself and you just rake yourself over the coals, because that's no good either. What we want to do is just a real honest evaluation for where you're at. That way you can make the adjustments. And the more honest and objective you are, it's going to help your adjustments that you determine are best for you. It's going to help them to be better, more relevant, more accurate, more impactful, all those things, so that you can really get on the tracks you want to get on and be able to be intentional, living out your purpose, and well, claiming your day, make the most of it, and make some progress. So, point 3 is be very objective with while giving yourself a little bit of grace. So those 3 points are really just the importance of being aware of where you're at, and you can't get to where you want to go unless you're checking in on where you're at. So you got to find out where you're at, and a great way to do that is reflect on your goals, values, time and energy, and some of your wins and challenges. And the third point is be very just objective, just an honest reflection and evaluation of where you're at, no criticism, and a lot of grace. Taking this time to reflect, see, it demonstrates, it shows, and it lives out your commitment to living intentionally. Without any awareness, you're not going to know where you are to be able to really get where you want to go. So if making the most of your time, living on purpose according to your values for your best life, if it's any bit important to you, then you have to be aware of where you're at. And that's where this simple step for this first episode of this mid-year check-in series is all about. Just getting honest with yourself on where you're at so that you can be intentional. So the action step today for this episode is scheduling a block of time for you to do this mid-year check-in. Scheduling a block of time. I really do recommend writing it out. If you have a journal, notepad, a paper tablet, whatever works best for you, and go through these things. While you're looking at those wins and challenges, asking yourself, what you're proud of. What you're proud of that you've accomplished so far, or really thinking about the goals that you've set. Dive into it and just let yourself continue to write. That's where you're going to get a lot of the gold, is having it a little less structured and just writing out what comes to your mind when you're thinking about those areas of your life and where you're at for this year. Allow yourself to write freely, just being honest. Don't worry about anybody watching. Get really honest with yourself. That way, when we move into some of the next episodes, we can dive in a little deeper, so that you'll have some more actionable things to work on, to take action on, to move forward on, so that you can make this year what you want it to be. Use this time to check in on yourself. And look, if you're listening to this episode 3 months from now, and it's not really the mid-year check-in, we're 3/4 of the way through, or maybe you're listening to it 7 months from now, and it's near the beginning of the year, it does not matter. You can do this check-in at any point in time to be able to make any adjustments that you need to make so that you can make the most of it, be intentional, live your best life. You do this at any point in time. The middle of the year is no special time. The new year is no special time. The best time to do this is today, my friend. The best time to do this is today, so that you can keep making progress on what's most important to you. Be honest in your reflections. Really provide that clear feedback for yourself, and that sets the stage for the positive changes that you want and that you need. Approach this time, this check-in, with curiosity. It's that growth mindset of finding out where you're at so that you can do what you need to do to get where you want to be. Get curious, have that growth mindset, my friend. This is all about your development and your intentional living. It is so worth the effort that you're going to put into this. So schedule your time, get honest, get curious, and get moving forward, my friend. This is for you. Thank you for listening to the Claim Your Day podcast. I'm glad you're here, you're joining in, you're taking action, you're doing the things that you need to do to live your best life according to your values and fulfill your purpose. And that is awesome. That is what this podcast is here, and I'm excited for you. As always, you can go to nickmazy.com. I got a few resources there on creating your intentional day. I got a life drift quiz. I'm creating a new one. It's going to be a little bit more hyper-focused on living out your purpose just for you. Thank you for listening. Take care. I can't wait to talk to you again in the next episode.